really interesting fight. We have top 10 ranked women's bantamweights. Ketlen Vieira taking on Yana Kunitskaya. And listen, you know the tape and the story on Yana Kunitskaya. She had an interesting fight in her UFC debut against Chris Cyborg. She lost the fight, but she gave a good account of herself. I mean, she almost got a takedown in that fight.
She got finished in the second minute.
Yeah, she did get finished, but, you know, it was different. And so after that, she had some good fights. She had a couple of good wins. Lena Landsberg, the elbow queen. She beat Marion Renault. Somewhat controversially, her eye was ballooned right up in that one. Loses to Aspen Ladd, gets finished there, and then beats Yulia Stoliarenko in a fight where it was supposed to be Ketlen Vieira. And you ended up with Stoliarenko that a lot of people recognize from The Ultimate Fighter. Ketlen Vieira is one of the strangest cases in MMA because she believes incredibly in her boxing. She has some good power. She trains out of Nova União, so you'd expect it to be there. But really, her bread and butter is her wrestling and her ground game. And for Ketlen Vieira, she was ranked second at one point in the UFC's bantamweight division. She took on Irene Aldana. And if you look at the odds, I'm going to look at them on Tapology. She's a minus 230 favorite according to them. She got finished in the first round by Irene Aldana's striking. This fight was supposed to happen 3 different times last year. Once in May, event canceled due to coronavirus. It was supposed to happen at the start of August, and then it was rescheduled, and Vieira withdrew. She eventually would fight Sijara Eubanks. She won predictably a decision against Sijara Eubanks. She was supposed to take on Marion Renault in that fight. Renault was hurt. So now we get her fight finally with Yana Kunitskaya. Vieira's at 6, Kunitskaya's at 7. Stylistically, clash of styles, I would say. And for Yana Kunitskaya, she's taken on grapplers in the past, and she's lost to some good grapplers. The other thing is, in her last fight, it was against Yulia Stoliarenko, where she just pushed the pace. She got Stoliarenko with her back up against the cage. And if you knew anything about Yulia Stoliarenko, it was that her striking wasn't very good, but her ground game was insane. Like, she could pull off weird submissions off her back. So she tried to pull, like, a guillotine as she climbed up the cage with her back to it, and really wasn't able to do a lot. I know she threatened at one point with an arm bar off of the ground in that one, if I'm not mistaken, near the end of one of the rounds, but overwhelmingly, Kunitskaya won that fight. And if you look at this one again, Kunitskaya, better striker. You got the better ground game from Ketlen Vieira, who has 92% takedown defense in the UFC. And if you look at Kunitskaya, 33% takedown defense. We saw it work in the fight against Stoliarenko, who came in on short notice. So overall, clash of styles. Weird co-main event, but I like it.
I have no idea who's going to win this fight, and I've got to say that, right? Just to start this whole thing off, because it is such a clash of styles. Kunitskaya can grapple off her back a little bit, but if you are on the ground with Ketlen Vieira, there's no way you're going to submit her off of your back. She is by far, I say by far, but other than Amanda Nunes, I would say Ketlen Vieira is the best grappler in this division. And even if you just go back to the Sarah McMahon fight, and trust me, no one's more critical of Sarah McMahon than your boy over here, but she was put in some bad positions in that fight, especially on the ground. McMahon herself was able to lock up a submission on Vieira, but Vieira was just able to stay calm, really focus, and then not only flip and get out of the head and arm choke, but put one on Sarah McMahon herself, like almost right after. And it was really high level grappling from Vieira, and it shows to me that even on her back in the worst position possible, Vieira can work her way and build to a great position herself. And for Kunitskaya, she has decent wrestling. A lot of her takedowns do come more from those head and arm throws that we see a lot more in women's MMA than we do in men's. But going for any of those arm throws, and here's the thing too, I don't predict Kunitskaya will go for a single takedown in this fight. It's just, if she does, her takedowns are the worst kind to go for against someone like Vieira, who is so good at taking the back. And if you are going for any of those head and arm throws, you're kind of just giving your opponent the back, especially if they are a very high level black belt like Vieira is. But for me, you look at the Vieira fight, especially against Irene Aldana, and Aldana is like Grasso. I'm not the first person to say that, because everyone mentions those two together. But that fight was a great case of Aldana's a good striker who is just very technical. She doesn't have murderous power by any means. Where then you have Vieira, who has confidence in her boxing, but I wouldn't say she's a great boxer by any means.
So wild.
Exactly. So you have Vieira throwing a wild shot, and Aldana just kind of waiting and catching her with a really nice left hook herself. I don't know. Vieira herself is elite, but she's never beaten an elite fighter. And that's what really worries me. And I can really throw both of these fighters into that category. The best win Kunitskaya has is over Marion Renault. And beating Marion Renault is a very hard thing to do, don't get me wrong. But Renault isn't really an elite fighter at this stage in her career. And
You're telling me a woman that's like 44 years old?
Exactly. Listen, she beat the brakes off both of us in the same day without breaking a sweat. But against Kunitskaya, and really in the UFC against the upper echelon, it's just tough for Marion Renault at this stage in her career. So the fact that Kunitskaya's best wins against Renault is a little concerning. But then on the flip side, Ketlen Vieira's best win is either, Katsangano, which was a weird split decision that Vieira probably won every round in, but still a weird decision fight. And then she has that nice arm triangle win over Sarah McMahon. It's just, you look at the wins of both, and I do think that both are somewhat elite, but neither has that really impressionable win that puts them over the edge and says, like, hey, you deserve a title fight. Because I think Vieira, she's been flirting with that kind of top three of, oh, maybe I should fight Amanda, maybe I need that one more win. If she gets this win, just because 135 needs a new title challenger, maybe they will match her up with like a Julian Pena, then you could have the winner of that potentially fight for the title in the future. But it's just such a weird fight between two fighters that I don't have a great read on.
Katlyn Vieira in her last fight against Sijara Eubanks, and I get it, but she threw no leg kicks. How crazy is that? Like, again, Sijara Eubanks is a good wrestler, but Katlyn Vieira is a judo black belt and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. So maybe you let things fly with your leg kicks and you try to slow down the wrestler, but she didn't. And she picked up a decision win there, 29-28 across the board. She was able to outstrike Eubanks at a lower percentage. She went 2 of 5 on her takedowns. Eubanks went 0 of 1. Interesting to me. I mean, Eubanks went for that takedown late in the third. And again, you talked about it, the wins. She beat Katsangano by split decision almost 3 years ago. She beat Sarah McMahon 3.5 years ago. Like, it's kind of crazy to think of that. She had that loss to Irene Aldana back in 2019. Took almost a full year off between that and the fight against Eubanks. And if you look at it for Yana Kunitskaya, you look at the level of competition that she took on over with Invicta and with some of the other organizations she was with. I mean, she beat Cindy Dandois and finished her with M1 Challenge, so we talk about Cindy a lot. That was 11 years ago. Well, 10 years ago.
Cindy Dandois t-shirts.
She beat Wu Yanan. That's a good win. She had that weird fight against Tanya Evinger where you can't stand on somebody's face, and then she lost to Tanya Evinger. She beat Raquel Canuto, and then it was the loss to Chris Cyborg that main evented UFC 222 for the UFC featherweight belt. Kind of crazy. Landsberg win, Renault, lose to Aspinlad, beats Yulia Stolyarenko. And again, Kunitskaya has pretty good striking. Kunitskaya has pretty good top pressure, too. She can get kind of caught in some submissions. You saw that in the fight against Stolyarenko, but she was able to get out of it and get the win. So for me, it is a difficult fight. I'd leave it off my card. The odds had Ketlen Vieira a minus 275 at open, about a minus 272 right now for Kunitskaya, plus 235 at a plus 217. If we look at the Topology votes, Matt, not really all that close. 867 total votes, 86% Vieira, 84% by decision. This is one of those ones that you pick Vieira and then you look like a donkey if she loses because all the Topology voters had her and the odds were overwhelmingly Vieira. I like Vieira in this fight. I don't love how wild of a striker she is because that's the thing. Wild striker, a lot of power. Not a lot of technique. Trains at a Nova União. Those things don't mix, but her ground game's really, really good. And she's a jiu-jitsu black belt and a judo black belt. So if the fight hits the mat, it's overwhelmingly Vieira. But every fight starts on the feet, as they say. And that much is true. And that would, that would obviously lend credence to Kunitskaya. But again, I don't love that when Kunitskaya tries to bring it to the mat, we're talking a lot of head and arm throws that Vieira would specialize in herself. I don't think the clinch positions really favor Kunitskaya. So I like Vieira in this fight, and I'll take her. But again, I don't like the odds. I don't like the Topology votes. I wouldn't feel confident in picking this card if I was putting it on a parlay or anything.
I agree. Both fighters have lost to similar fighters that their opponent is. Like, Vieira can fight in a very similar way to an Aspinlad, where she does do that kind of wet blanket, I'm going to get on top, ground and pound submission. But then Kunitskaya, again, I don't think her technique is similar to an Aldana, but she can just wait on the outside, sort of pepper you with those long-range attacks. So I agree. I'll pick Ketlen in this fight. Not my most confident pick, especially where the odds are at right now, but I do see her getting this fight to the mat at some point throughout these 3 rounds and probably dominating from there on.
To the person that comes back on Sunday morning, this is a parlay buster. So watch out for it. We're both going with Ketlen Vieira to get the win, but I cannot preface that. Like, there's got to be a warning there for somebody. Overall, really looking forward to this card. We have a great main event coming up between Curtis Razor Blaydes and the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. I love it. That should be an awesome fight. So really looking forward to it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt, as we always say.
Let's get into it.